hello everyone, I'm Pauline from Balkan, and I will talk, as it has been said, about pushbacks and border violence along the Balkan route and which role Frontex is playing in the current context. So maybe shortly about Balkanbrücke. We are an association of activists who try to advocate for the rights of people on the move along the Balkan route, especially in the German public, and we understand ourselves as a platform addressing the developments and violence along the Balkan route in order to raise awareness about the current situation. Therefore, we focus especially on the German and European or EU responsibility in the situation. And also with our working group, Balkanbrücke Supports, we are collecting donations in order to support local groups on the ground. And in our general work, that's very important that we try to work as closely as possible with local structures and to support them. So generally about the Balkan route, the Balkan route is the route from the Middle East to Europe, and for centuries already this route has been used for trade and goods transfers, but also as a travel route. But I think you might know the so-called Balkan route as a flight corridor from 2015, when there were many media images about the situation. And the so-called formalized corridor was established, where countries along the Balkan route issued transit visa to facilitate the transit and the movement of people fleeing towards the European Union. Then, but also in 2015, there were harsh reactions and we experienced a borderization or re-borderization in the Balkan region, starting with Hungary, which began to build a fence along its border with Serbia. And since then, the so-called border management was only intensified. So through technology, drone patrols, transit centers, and very, very restrictive asylum policies, which run against European law, and also border violence and pushbacks, people the border were protected, yes, and in 2016 the Balkan route was also officially closed. And this fortification of borders leads to a situation where people are stuck in the bordering countries to the European Union, so mainly in Serbia and Bosnia. And yes, there are daily reports about illegal pushbacks along the borders. There's a group called Border Violence Monitoring Network, which is collecting reports about border violence and pushbacks. And only in November 2021, for instance, they collected 34 testimonies impacting more than 1,000 people. And yes, through this fortification of borders, we also see a changement of routes. So in 2015 and 16, people were mainly trying to cross through Serbia to Hungary. And then in Bosnia, and then in 2018, that shifted and people were starting to try to go through Bosnia and Croatia. And now, since this route is also basically, closed by violence, people are trying to go through Romania. And yes, so pushbacks in general are systematically used along the Balkan route. And as you see, Border Violence Monitoring Network, which is mostly collecting evidences of pushbacks along the Balkan route, is documenting also the violence which is used. And as you see, people are beaten up, their belongings are taken, and that's happening like all the time in 90% of the cases. Sorry, yeah. And the pushbacks are mainly happening from Croatia to Bosnia and Serbia, but also from Greece and Hungary, Montenegro, and Turkey. So, what are the reactions of the European Union? So, especially to the accusations against the Croatian police, the European Union remained quite silent. Also, the Ministry of Interior of Croatia remained silent for a long time. Last year, then there were evidences of journalists who were filming which is happening at the Croatian border. Then some police officers were suspended, but there were no major reactions. And now in December, the Council of Europe released a report, the Anti-Torture Committee released a report about what is happening, which was quite striking. So yes, we're still waiting what is happening. Then the last government, since Balkanbrücke is quite like focusing on German responsibility also, I will talk a bit about the German government. The last government rhetorically and materially supported what is happening in Croatia. So they donated cars, and so which is quite problematic. And the EU Commission showed themselves concerned, but there were no like real actions. For example, Croatia is still in the Schengen process, and yeah, we didn't see any major reactions. Which role is Frontex playing in the current context? I'm sorry. So Frontex, as you may know, is the EU's border guard agency. And yes, Frontex is also Frontex is active at the borders of the EU to support national border guards, also along the Balkan route. In 2021, the mission of Frontex was suspended in Hungary because the Court of Justice of the European Union judged that Hungary was failing its obligation to ensure effective access to the procedure for granting international protection. Yes, the Frontex fundamental rights officer said that already since 2016, that this mission is problematic since systematic human rights violations were reported, but the mission was never suspended. So yes, it was an important decision, still very late. And also Frontex remains present at other borders, as in Greece and Romania, assisting countries to secure their borders. And there's reported involvement in pushbacks and human rights violations, especially in Greece. It has even there were even videos of journalists who filmed the involvement of Frontex. Also in 2019, there were major expansions of the Frontex mandate. So they, yes, as Anna already said, they will form a large-scale standing corps, and the budget was expanded. And also there were ways of deployment in third countries. That means that Frontex can be present in countries which are outside of the European Union. In the Balkan region, that means that there are now agreements between Frontex and several countries as Albania, Serbia, and Montenegro. And yes, Frontex can be present outside of the European borders. And in these countries now, Frontex is also reportedly involved in pushbacks. Yes, so we see many problems with Frontex. Beside their involvement in human rights violations, there's a big lack of transparency in the actions. The chef of Frontex, Leggeri, neglected evidences, lied in front of the European Parliament, etc. So there are many problems, and also problems in legal accountability, because responsibility is often shifted from national border guards to Frontex and back. So it's very difficult to hold Frontex accountable. We also see the deployment in third countries, as in Serbia, for example, very, very problematic, because it only contributes to the externalization of EU borders, which means that borders are pushed further away so that people can't even reach the borders of the European Union anymore. And also, since the mission in Hungary was suspended, but if Frontex is present at the other side of the borders on the Serbian side, which sense does that have? Yes, and also Frontex contributes majorly to the surveillance of people on the move on the external borders. So as Balkanbrücke, or as a group, we had some demands, for example, to end the German participation in Frontex missions at borders where human rights violations happening. And yes, we are part of the Abolish Frontex network, which are demanding major changes major shift is in the EU border regime.